A squirrel just buried an acorn at your door. You watched it happen. The squirrel dug a small hole in the soil right near your threshold, placed an acorn or a walnut or some small gathered object into the hole, covered it carefully with dirt, patted the soil down, and walked away. And you thought, the squirrel is leaving me something. The squirrel likes me. The squirrel trusts me enough to leave a gift here in the most visible place at the entrance to my home. But that is not what happened. The squirrel was not leaving you a gift. The squirrel was not performing an act of trust or affection. The squirrel was not deliberately offering you something. The squirrel was doing something far more strategic than that. Something that reveals far more about the squirrel's relationship with your space and with you than any gift could reveal. Something that, once you understand it, will change the way you see every burial a squirrel makes in your yard. The squirrel did not choose your doorstep randomly. There are reasons, complex, strategic, calculated reasons, why this particular spot became the burial location. And those reasons tell a story about how the squirrel actually perceives you. Tonight you are going to understand what really happened when that squirrel buried something at your door. Welcome back to Hidden Backyard Wildlife, the channel where we sit with the small wild lives that share our yards and try to understand what they understand about the world. If you are new here, make sure you subscribe before this video is over, because what you are about to learn is going to completely change your understanding of what it means when a squirrel buries something near your home, because you will finally understand that the burial is not about you. It is about the squirrel's survival strategy and what that strategy reveals about how the squirrel has categorized your space. Today we are walking through 8 things that a squirrel's choice to bury something at your door actually means. What each of those things reveals about the extraordinary strategic intelligence of an animal that does not bury things randomly, but with careful consideration of location, safety, and resource protection. And why the fact that a squirrel chose your doorstep as a cache location is one of the most significant compliments you can receive from a wild animal. Stay with me from beginning to end, because revelation number 6 is the one that explains how squirrels think about human presence as protection rather than threat. And revelation number 8 is the one that will completely reframe what it means when a squirrel trusts your space with its survival resources. The squirrel was not leaving you a gift, but what it was doing is far more intimate than a gift could ever be. The first and most important thing to understand about a squirrel burying something at your door is that the squirrel would never choose an unsafe location for a cache. A cache is not casual storage. It is survival resource storage. Every acorn buried is food designated to be retrieved and eaten during the winter months when natural food sources are scarce. The location of the cache is a life-or-death decision. The squirrel that chooses to bury an acorn at your door has conducted an assessment of that location and concluded that it is safe enough to store vital winter resources there, safe from theft by other squirrels, safe from discovery by larger predators, safe from disturbance, safe enough to gamble with the survival calories. The assessment includes multiple variables. Is the soil here stable enough to dig without the burial being destroyed by water drainage or ground instability? Is the location visible enough that the squirrel can relocate the cache later, but protected enough that other animals will not discover it? Is the location proximate to the rest of the squirrel's territory, such that retrieving the cache during winter is energy efficient? And most importantly, does the presence of the human at this location provide safety benefits that outweigh the risks? Researchers studying cache location selection in eastern gray squirrels have found that squirrels demonstrate sophisticated site selection behavior, choosing burial locations based on microhabitat characteristics, predator pressure, and social variables, with individual squirrels showing consistent preferences for cache sites that have proven effective in previous seasons. Your door is not a random location. Your door is a location that the squirrel has assessed as meeting multiple safety criteria. The soil composition is right. The proximity to protective structures is right. The distance from predator approach vectors is right. And the presence of a human, you, provides something valuable that wild locations do not provide. She chose your door because she has assessed it as one of the safest places available to her to store food that she will need to survive the winter. The second thing that a squirrel's choice to bury at your door reveals is that she is testing something about you. Specifically, she is testing whether you will interfere with her caching activity. Many squirrels have learned, through encounters with humans, that some humans respond to caching activity with intervention. Some humans fill in holes that squirrels dig. Some humans cover areas where squirrels bury things. Some humans chase squirrels away from their yards. Some humans set traps or use deterrents specifically to prevent squirrel caching behavior. A squirrel that chooses to bury at your door is conducting an experiment. She is burying something visible at the entrance to your home, where you will almost certainly notice the activity, and she is observing what happens next. Will you come outside and chase her away? Will you fill in the hole? Will you cover the area or treat it in some way that prevents further caching? Will you punish the behavior? Or will you do nothing? Researchers studying habituation and behavioral feedback in urban squirrels have found that squirrels rapidly learn to categorize humans into interference and non-interference categories based on behavioral response to specific squirrel activities, with squirrels showing significantly increased likelihood of returning to specific locations and repeating specific behaviors if those behaviors have not been met with human interference. The burial at your door is a test. The squirrel is saying, through her action, I am going to do this thing that I need to do for my survival. I am going to do it in your space. What are you going to do about it? And if you do nothing, if you allow the burial to stand, if you do not interfere, if you allow the squirrel to complete the caching process without penalty, the squirrel learns something crucial about you. You are a human who does not interfere with squirrel survival behaviors. That is worth knowing. When a squirrel buries something at your door rather than in the wild parts of her territory, she is making a statement about your space. She is categorizing it as protected territory. Protected territory means something specific in the squirrel's world. It means a space where human presence provides security against other squirrel intrusion. It means a space where the density of predators is lower than in surrounding areas, because the human presence itself deters some predators. It means a space where the human presence, while potentially a threat, is a known and predictable threat rather than the variable predator pressure of truly wild areas. A squirrel will bury resources in wild areas, but a squirrel will bury valuable winter resources in protected spaces, spaces where she has calculated that human presence, on balance, provides more safety than it removes. Your doorstep is protected territory in the squirrel's assessment because 1. The presence of a structure, your house, provides security and visibility that allows the squirrel to detect approaching threats. 2. The human presence deters other predators and sometimes other squirrels. 3. The territory is maintained and organized in a way that reduces parasites and hazards that might affect a buried cache. 4. The particular location, near human activity but not directly in it, provides a middle ground between human protection and independent squirrel access. Researchers studying cache site selection in suburban versus rural squirrel populations have found that suburban squirrels with access to human-protected areas consistently show higher cache site fidelity and higher recovery rates from cached resources, suggesting that the protection benefits of human-associated spaces genuinely outweigh the risk factors. When a squirrel buries something at your door, she is announcing, I have decided that your space is safer than the alternatives. I have decided that your presence, your protection, your territory is worth the risk. This is where I will store my survival resources. This is the assumption that most people get profoundly wrong. When you see a squirrel bury something at your door, your first instinct is that the squirrel is offering you something. The squirrel is leaving you a gift. The squirrel is being generous or friendly or expressing affection. But the truth is actually the inverse. The squirrel is not offering you anything. The squirrel is trusting you with something. The squirrel is trusting you not to take it. A cache is not a gift. A cache is survival capital. It is the acorn the squirrel will need in February when the snow is deep and the natural food sources are inaccessible. It is the walnut that will sustain her through the cold months. It is investment in her own future. And she is burying it in your space and trusting you not to steal it. Some squirrels have learned that humans steal from caches. Some squirrels have had their buried acorns dug up by humans who thought it was amusing, or who did not realize what they were doing. Some squirrels have watched humans deliberately destroy cache sites or cover them in ways that make retrieval impossible. But the squirrel that buries at your door has made an assessment that you are not that kind of human. You are a human who, even if you notice the cache, will leave it alone. You are a human who understands that the buried acorn is not a gift but a trust. You are a human whose presence provides protection specifically, because you will not interfere with the squirrel's survival strategies. The cache at your door is not generosity. It is trust. And trust, in the language of wild animals, is far more significant than generosity. This might be the most important revelation of all. Squirrels have learned, through bitter experience, that some humans poison their spaces. Some humans put out poison specifically designed to kill squirrels or to make squirrels ill. Some humans treat their yards with pesticides or herbicides that render the plants and seeds toxic. Some humans deliberately create environments hostile to squirrel presence. A squirrel will not bury food in a poisoned space. Not because the squirrel consciously thinks about toxins in the way a human does, but because squirrels have extraordinary ability to detect the presence of toxins in an environment through chemical and olfactory cues, and they avoid spaces where they detect the chemical signatures of poison. When a squirrel chooses to bury a vital food resource at your door, she is communicating something profound. I have assessed the chemical profile of your space and determined it is not poisoned. I have observed your treatment of this environment and concluded that you do not use poisons here. I have gathered intelligence about your household and determined that it is safe for me to invest my survival resources here. You may think that you have never done anything to make the squirrel think this, but the squirrel has been assessing you through smell and observation. The squirrel has been reading whether you apply pesticides to your garden, whether you use rodent poison, whether you treat your yard with chemicals that would render cached food inedible or toxic. And the squirrel's conclusion, expressed through the act of burying at your door, is, this space is clean. This human does not poison. This location is safe for survival investment. Researchers studying toxin avoidance and spatial memory in squirrels have found that squirrels demonstrate sophisticated ability to remember which areas have been treated with toxins and show consistent avoidance of those areas across seasons and years, suggesting that squirrels build detailed maps of poison locations and actively cache in areas they have determined to be toxin-free. When the squirrel buries at your door, she is saying, you are the kind of human who does not poison. Your space is clean. I trust my survival resources to your non-toxicity. This is the one that explains how squirrels think about human presence as protection rather than threat. Most people assume that squirrels prefer human-free spaces. The assumption is that wild spaces are better than human spaces, and that a squirrel would always choose to live and cache in areas without humans if given the option. But that assumption is wrong. The reality is that human presence in many residential areas provides extraordinary protection against natural predators. Hawks circle suburban neighborhoods less frequently than wild areas because humans provide unpredictable disturbances that deter aerial predators. Snakes are less common in maintained yards than in dense vegetation. Predatory mammals avoid areas with human activity. A squirrel that is making a survival calculation does not choose based on human free versus human present. The squirrel chooses based on likelihood of cache theft and likelihood of predation. And in suburban spaces, human presence actually reduces predation pressure in ways that benefit the squirrel. Your door provides protection not despite your presence but because of it. Your door is safer because you are there. Your yard is more secure because humans maintain it and move through it, deterring predators. Your home, from the squirrel's perspective, is a structure that provides both concealment and security precisely because it is human-maintained. The squirrel that buries at your door is not braving a dangerous human space. The squirrel is choosing a space where human presence, your specific, predictable, non-interfering presence, actually provides the safety she needs to survive. Researchers studying predator avoidance in suburban squirrel populations have found that squirrels in human-adjacent spaces show significantly lower predation rates and higher winter survival rates compared to squirrels in fully wild populations, suggesting that human presence genuinely provides protective benefits that outweigh the risk factors. When the squirrel buries at your door, she is saying, "Your presence makes me safer. Your home provides security I cannot find elsewhere. Your yard is where I will invest my survival resources because your presence ensures they will be there when I need them." The squirrel that buries at your door has not made this decision impulsively. This decision is the result of weeks or months of observation. The squirrel has been watching you, watching how you treat your space, watching how you respond to squirrels, watching whether you chase or tolerate, watching whether you poison or leave clean, watching whether you seem aggressive or calm in your movements, watching whether you come outside at predictable times or unpredictably, watching whether you tend your garden or leave it wild. All of this watching has accumulated into a profile, a file on you, an assessment of what kind of human you are and what kind of space you maintain. And the conclusion of this long observation period is, this is a human I can trust. This is a space I can invest in. This is a location where I will bury my survival resources. The burial is not a new relationship. The burial is the culmination of a relationship that has been building for months without your explicit awareness of it. The squirrel has known you for a long time. The squirrel has assessed you thoroughly. The squirrel is not taking a risk by burying at your door. The squirrel is taking the calculated action of an animal that has already determined the risk is acceptable. Researchers studying long-term habituation in squirrels have found that individual squirrels that maintain consistent associations with specific human households over multiple seasons show dramatically increased comfort with those households and increased willingness to cache in human-adjacent spaces, suggesting that familiarity and repeated non-negative interaction are primary drivers of cache site selection in human-occupied areas. When the squirrel buries at your door, she is saying, "I have watched you. I have observed you for long enough that I understand you. I have concluded that you are trustworthy, and I am going to put my survival in your space." That is intimacy. I have saved this one for last, because it is the revelation that should change the way you think about what it means when a squirrel buries something in your yard. The squirrel that chooses to bury at your door has not chosen randomly from a set of equally good options. The squirrel has made a choice. She has eliminated other possibilities and selected your space. In your squirrel's territory, there are wild areas. There are other yards. There are parks and forests and undeveloped land. There are dozens of potential cache locations available to the squirrel, and the squirrel has access to all of them. But the squirrel has chosen your door. This is not happening because your door is the only option. This is happening because your door is a better option than the alternatives. Your door is safer. Your door is more protected. Your door is more reliable. Your door is where the squirrel has calculated she will have the highest probability of successfully storing and retrieving survival resources. The choice of your space is a choice made in comparison to every other available space. It is the squirrel saying, "Among all the places I could bury this acorn, your door is the best choice." That choice is not abstract. It is specific and personal and meaningful. The squirrel is not exercising a generic caching behavior. The squirrel is exercising a strategic decision about where to invest survival capital, and that investment is being placed with you. Researchers studying site fidelity in squirrel caching behavior have found that individual squirrels show remarkable consistency in returning to specific cache locations across seasons, with some squirrels maintaining fidelity to preferred cache sites for years, suggesting that site selection is based on accumulated knowledge and repeated positive outcomes rather than random placement. When the squirrel buries at your door, she is saying, "I have evaluated all my options. I have considered safety, proximity, predator pressure, human behavior, and seasonal access. And I have concluded that your space, your specific space, with your specific presence, is where I will store the resources that will keep me alive through the winter." That is not a gift. That is not casual behavior. That is not random. That is the squirrel trusting you with her survival. That is the squirrel investing her future in your hands. That is the squirrel saying, "You are safe. Your space is safe. I am choosing you." That is not a story about squirrel behavior. That is a story about what it means to be trusted by something wild, about an animal making a deliberate choice to invest its survival in a space you maintain, about a small wild being looking at all the options available to her and deciding that your door, the threshold of your home, the entrance to your life, is where she will place her most precious resource. The acorn buried at your door is not a gift, but the choice to bury it there is something far more significant. It is trust. It is recognition. It is the squirrel saying, "Among all the creatures and all the spaces in my world, I choose you." Before I go, I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer in the comments below. Do you have squirrels burying things in your yard? Do you have caches near your door, under your plants, in the edges of your property? When you found them, what did you think was happening? Did you understand that the squirrel was not offering you a gift but trusting you with survival resources? Tell me about it. Where are the cache sites? How many do you have? Have you been filling them in, or have you been allowing them to remain? What changed when you understood what was really happening? The stories this hidden backyard wildlife community shares are some of the most extraordinary I read every week. And every single one of them matters, because every single one of them is a story about being chosen by a wild animal, about an animal deciding that your space, your home, your presence is trustworthy enough to invest survival capital. If anything in this video changed the way you see the caches in your yard, if it shifted your understanding from "the squirrel is giving me something" to "the squirrel is trusting me with something," share it with someone who would understand. Sometimes the right perspective at the right moment changes what we notice for the rest of our lives. Thank you for being here at Hidden Backyard Wildlife. The next time you see a squirrel burying an acorn at your door, pause for a moment. Understand what is really happening. Understand that the squirrel has looked at every option available to her and chosen your space. Understand that she is trusting you with survival capital. Understand that the simple act of digging a hole and burying a seed near your threshold is an act of profound trust. Do not fill in the hole. Do not cover the space. Do not interfere. Instead, recognize it for what it is, a wild animal telling you that you have earned her trust, that your space is safe, that you are the kind of human a squirrel can believe in. That is the gift, after all, not the acorn. The gift is being chosen. I will see you in the next one.